Um, but no, thank you for coming back and joining us again this morning. We had the pleasure of having Mr. Michael Martinez here joining us today. He's kind of our hype guy for this would be if we were face-to-face, this would be fantastic to have him speak in the morning and say, okay, ready, go. And then everybody runs off to their sessions and is excited to go. It's still going to be the same. You're still going to run off to your sessions. They're just going to be a little bit different. But Michael Martinez from Queens, New York, from what I understand, just talking this morning a little bit with Mike, he's a little disappointed. He was hoping to be an extra in the new Coming to America movie that was filmed in Queens, but was understudy, didn't get the call, but he was still able to join us here this morning. Mike and I have got to know each other over the past few years, spent some time in Dallas, some time in Tampa together, and always a good time when the two of us get together and can share stories and talk phys ed and more. But Michael Martinez from Queens, New York. How are you?
I am doing great. Jason, thank you so much for that introduction. I apologize in advance to anyone who was here to hear Melanie last night for the letdown you're about to receive from my end of the bargain, but I am incredibly excited to be here. I want to thank Angie and Jason and everyone from the ND Shape family who is responsible for letting me hang out with y'all for the day. I appreciate it. And not only just that, but also for the incredible lineup of presenters that I get to be a part of today as well. One of the many things that I've missed over the last almost 12 months now is stuff like this, going to conferences and interacting with like-minded people who are just as passionate about PE as I am, and not being able to do that in person has been a pretty big bummer for me. But the bright side is being able to now present with and learn from folks from all over the country at a state conference that I normally would have to go to a national conference for. So thank you for your efforts, folks, in making this what's bound to be a wonderful weekend of learning and excitement, and just for continuing to push PE in a positive direction for the folks and for the kids of North Dakota. So I want to talk a little bit about my journey, a little bit about the journey known as teaching that we're all kind of going on together. A little bit about myself. Again, my name is Mike Martinez. I'm a 12th year PE teacher here in New York City. And my career's kind of been all over the place for the last dozen years or so. I've taught K through 8 for 4 years, K through 4 for 4 years, high school for 2 years. Now I'm back at the middle school level where I've been for the last couple of years. So that has kind of allowed me to see the K through 12 PE spectrum on a firsthand level, and really get to see what PE looks like at every level when it's done really well, and also kind of what it looks like when it's not done really well. But it's provided me with a very, very unique experience that I'm incredibly thankful for. Speaking of thankful, I always start these talks out with a huge thanks for these two folks here. I am the very, very proud and very undeserving husband of this beautiful young lady. It's my wife, Sarah, and our 8-year-old, soon to be 8-year-old bundle of chaos, Mason, over there. The board got to see Mason just a few seconds ago. He just arose from his slumber. I think this picture was the last time his hair was cut pre-pandemic. So I love giving them a shout out because they are, aside from being my everything and my world, they are incredibly patient and kind and generous with their time and their energy in allowing me to do stuff like this. Once upon a time when travel was a thing that we all used to do, it's never easy to be away from the family unit for a night, a weekend, a week. But they have always been fantastic in letting me pursue my passions and chase my dreams and kind of pick up my slack on the back end. I mentioned to the board that we actually just bought a house yesterday, just closed and everything. And this is the only corner of our apartment that doesn't have boxes stacked up in it, which is why I'm facing this direction. But Sarah's in there handling breakfast duties. Mason's making sure all his action figures are packed up nice and neat in a box that says very fragile, do not drop So, they're holding up their end of the bargain and allowing me to rock with you folks for a few hours this morning. So I'm incredibly thankful for their love and their support. I wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff without them. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention my brothers and sisters on the Open National Training Team. If you're familiar with Open, you probably know some of these 65, 70-ish of the most brilliant, dedicated, passionate, loving, caring, knowledgeable, not even just educators, but human beings I've ever met in my entire life. Many of whom, a few of whom you'll see this week, today, presenting at the conference. For almost my entire career, I've been alone on an island, like I'm sure many of you have experienced, the only PE teacher in my building. And ever since stumbling upon this group about a little over 3 years ago, I've never had to feel alone or on my own, professionally or personally, ever since then. And the thing that I probably appreciate the most about being associated with them is that by proxy, you now get to be associated with them as well. I have a session coming up right after this keynote here. And at the end of all my sessions, I always share my personal information. And it's not just lip service. I encourage people to reach out, to keep in touch. I love what I do. I love talking shop and exchanging ideas and learning from other folks, sharing the feedback and bouncing ideas off of each other. And anytime someone does reach out and has a question, if I can't answer it, and oftentimes I can't, I know someone in this picture can answer that question. So I love being able to extend that wealth of knowledge to folks like yourselves who I come across in various states, and just help to keep PE moving in a positive direction, in the right direction. And again, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for my Open family. So I'm incredibly thankful for them. But enough about me. I want to talk about you folks for a little bit. And don't worry, I'm not going to call on anyone or put you on the spot or ask you to do anything ridiculous. I just kind of want to get a sense of who's here, who we're rocking with today. So if you're familiar with the little raise your hand feature, or if your camera's on and want to just raise your hand for me, where are my seasoned veterans at? Where are my 15 to 20, 25 plus year teachers? Just raise your hand for me real quick so I can see who we're working with out here. Love it. Folks, if you're watching the screens as well, take a look at who these hands are. These are the leaders in your area. These are folks who have seen it all, done it all, probably tried and failed at it all multiple times, and just simply know what works. And yet here they are, they're still here, learning, sharing, and continuing to do what they can, even though the bulk of their career might be behind them, to make sure that teachers are still moving forward, students are still succeeding, and are doing the best for PE in North Dakota. So I tip my invisible cap to you folks. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us all. Where's my crew at? Where's my 5 to 15 year folks? We can throw those hands up real quick so we see who we're working with. 5 to 15 years is a real sweet spot. Hopefully you're experiencing that same thing that I'm feeling, where it took me about 4 or 5 years to kind of sort of feel like I knew what I'm doing. The first few years of my career were an absolute abomination. It's a miracle the state of New York allowed me to keep doing this. But by year 5, year 10, I feel like I finally got into a good groove and started to attend conferences like this, and saw my role kind of transition from being an attendee who was here to learn to being more of a presenter who wanted to maybe share a tip or a trick. If you have not done that yet, folks, I encourage you next year to give it a shot. Come on out to the conference, and I guarantee every single person in this Zoom room does at least one thing in your job better than everybody else that's here. So we would all benefit from that one tip, that one trick. And again, just to continue making our craft that much easier, that much more fun. So if you haven't considered that yet, I say give it a shot, and hopefully we'll see you back next year doing that. Now, where are my babies at? Where are my rookies, my pre-service, first year, 1 through 5? Where are you folks at? Oh man, I am. First of all, I'm so incredibly thankful that you're here, but also incredibly jealous. Just the fact that you're here doing this tells me that you already know an infinite amount more about life and your job than I did in years 1 through 5. And I can guarantee you the fact that you're dedicating this time and this energy to yourself, your craft, and your students now is going to put you light years ahead of where I am at year 12 by the time you get to year 12. So a huge, huge shout out to you folks. Thank you all for being here and for continuing to do wonderful things, for, again, for yourself and for your students. Man, remember your first year of teaching? I remember my first year of teaching. I remember my first day of teaching. It was the kind of day that could have and probably should have chased me away from the profession forever, but luckily it did not. Before I get into the first day, just kind of backtrack a little bit. Almost everything about me, my career, my life, almost everything has been pure luck. I don't think I'm particularly good at anything really, but I just seem to be right place, right time, and have caught a lot of breaks along the way. And my first job was no different. I still remember I was slated to graduate on a Saturday, May 10th. And the week before that, I had lined up an interview. So I went to college in the western part of New York State, a city called Rochester, but was from New York City originally. I drove the 6-hour drive on Wednesday. I interviewed on Thursday, drove back 6 hours on Friday, graduated on Saturday, and had a job offer on Monday. Now, I understand that not many people had that experience. I consider myself very fortunate, very lucky that 48 hours or so after graduating, my job search was over and I could rest easy. But it wasn't just that peace of mind that was beneficial for me. It was I now had 4 months to plan for year one and for day one, and plan I did. I planned and I planned. I planned for my plans. I'm talking, year-long plans, unit plans, lesson plans. I planned what song I wanted playing for my CD player. For those of you who are old, remember those. What side of the whiteboard I wanted my heading to be on. What door I wanted kids to come in from. What line I wanted to walk in. Where I wanted them to sit. I planned for everything. I planned for what I wanted to go right. I planned for what could go wrong. I planned for what I would do if that went wrong. I planned and I planned and I planned. And with that preparation came the regular 3-week or so meltdown where I would totally freak out and worry that all my plans were for naught, that I wasn't going to be any good. And I would call one of my favorite professors and just kind of, brain dump to him and have to talk me off the ledge. And every time I called, he would laugh at me. He would laugh and he'd say, kid, you're going to be great. Just don't let them see you sweat. And so I'd go back to work with that confidence and, I'd start planning again some more. And 3 weeks later, I'd call him again, Doc, what if they don't like me? What if the kids don't like me? What if this doesn't work? What if I'm no good? What if I teach everything I have planned and it's only March and I have like 3 more months to go? Like what do I do? And he's like, kid, you're going to be great. Just don't let them see you sweat. So the night before, I went into my school building and I taught my lessons probably a dozen times. I taught in front of a mirror. I practiced. I tried different, inflections. I practiced everything to make sure that I would not fail day one. And then it happened. Year one, day one, period one, kindergarten. Now I can tell who the elementary school teachers are by the laughs that I'm seeing on the other side of the screen. You already know what's coming. So the doors open up and 30 of the most beautiful, angelic, innocent, terrifying little faces and bodies come tiptoeing through the door, marveling at the size of this gigantic room, the bright light shining in their faces. And I was ready. I knew that they were going to be more nervous than I was, and I was ready. So I went into full entertainer mode. Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Mr. Martinez. We're going to have so much fun this year. We're going to learn how to run and skip and hop and jump and throw and catch and kick. We're going to play so many games. We're going to have an absolute blast. But before we do that, I have to learn what your names are. That way we can get to know each other a little bit better and just have a really, really great time and make sure we're maximizing our time together. So here's what we're going to do. When you hear your name called, the first person I call is going to come and sit to this spot that has number 1 on it. The second person I call, you're going to walk and sit on this spot that has number 2 on it, and so on and so forth. So do not move until you hear your name called. And of course, they were all terrified beyond belief, so none of them moved a muscle and just stared at me. So I grab my class roster and I go to call the first name. Oh, boy. I didn't plan for that. So I looked at the list. I looked at the crowd. I said, all right, first person up. Isaac Bouwe. I'm looking around. Crickets. Nothing. I said, all right, maybe Isaac Bouwa. Not a single hand goes up. Now, there were 30 names on my list. There were 30 kids in front of me. This kid was here somewhere. I was determined to find out who this kid was. So I said, okay, changing plans. And I can feel a little glisten coming about my brow, but I wasn't gonna let him see me sweat. I said, let's try it this way. If your name sounds like Isaac Bouwe, raise your hand. And 15 hands shoot up to the sky. Now, I looked back at the roster. There was only one name that looked like it could have or should have been Isaac Bouwe. So these kids we were wrong. We were all wrong. I said, all right, put your hands down. Let's try something different. If your first name starts with the letter I, raise your hand. And about 13 hands shoot up. Not the same hands that were up 2 seconds ago. A different crowd of 13 hands shoot up. At this point, just buckets of sweat are falling off my face. My whole life is ruined. I don't know what to do. So I scrapped everything. I went to the first kid in line. I threw the piece of paper in their face. I said, is this, to make things worse, I didn't even know if I was looking for a boy or a girl. I was flying blind here. I threw the paper in his face. I said, is this you? No, next kid. Is this you? No, next kid. I went down probably about 16, 17, 18 kids down the row. And there she was. This beautiful little princess with her feet together, staring down at her toes. I threw the paper in her face and I said, is this you? And she looked at me and she went. Now, I was 50% relieved that I finally found this missing child, but also 50% chapped that she decided on her first day of her school career, she was gonna ruin my day, my year, my career, my life before 8:30 in the morning. So I said, sweetie, how do you pronounce your first name? And she looked back up at me and softly whispered, Izegwa. I said, the I was an E, the B and the U were silent. I wasn't ready for any of that. I said, Izegwa. Now, in hindsight, I should have left well enough alone. I should have told her to go sit on spot number 1 and move down with my day. But I needed to push further. I needed to understand why we got ourselves in this position. So I said, Izegwa, when you heard me say, if your name sounds like Izegbua, did you think I was talking about you? And she looked up and went, I said, okay, good. I'm glad it's not just me. Sweetie, why didn't you raise your hand? And she looked up again and just went. And it was in that moment that I realized that no matter how much I planned, no matter how ready I thought I was, no matter how much work I put into this, things are not always going to go the way I want them to. They're not always going to be as they say. Now, I can sense the judgment coming through the Zoom screen right now. Yes, in hindsight, I realized I should have just gone to kid number 2, whose name was Jason, by the way, and just gone through the list that way and left these Izegwa for last. It was my first day too. It was a rookie mistake. It hasn't happened since. Trust me. Me and Ziggy became great friends after that, and we never had that problem again. But I learned a very valuable lesson that has kind of served as a microcosm for teaching as a whole. That you have to have plan A, plan B, plan C, D, and E, but also be ready to pivot to F and G. I hope those were in the right order, because things are not going to always go according to plan. Which kind of leads me to this picture here. I love sharing this graphic here, and no, this is not what I picture North Dakota looking like in July. But I often show this picture and ask people, what do you see? Because I'm sure for many folks here in this Zoom, you probably see a great day to go snowshoeing or sledding or ice fishing or any of the ridiculously wonderful things that you folks do all the way out there. But if I ask my buddy Mike Morris, who's presenting a little later today from North Carolina, he probably sees a week and a half off of school and the end of the world coming his way. And the beauty of this picture, to me anyway, is regardless of what you see, you're right. It's the same picture, it's the same scenario, the same circumstance, but 2 different people could and probably will have 2 different perceptions of the same exact circumstance. And again, that has followed me through 12 years of teaching, through coaching, through pretty much every facet of my life. And I've kind of started to realize that I can't change the circumstance. I can't change the weather in this picture, but I do have some control over what I think about and how I perceive it. And the way I envision it, the way I choose to perceive it, is going to change the way I feel about it and the way that it impacts me. So when I go through every challenge, right, every scenario, every situation, thinking specifically teaching related, but really in any area, each one offers at least two different ways of approaching it. And determining how to approach it, again, will ultimately decide or dictate how I feel and how it impacts me. And this reminds me of a lot of teachers who I've come across who are in that 10, 15, 20-year range, who still have a lot of career left, but are just really, really kind of jaded and hardened and kind of looking at the finish line, even though it's not as close as they want it to be. So by thinking of some of those challenges that come up in our day-to-day and thinking about how we can approach them, I think that while I'm not encouraging you to always be Mr. or Miss Brightside, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, nor should you, I think by having that mindset shift, it could alleviate some of these situations and kind of just make for a more positive outlook for all. Now, I'm sure this is a scenario that is just unique to my situation in New York City. I'm sure no one in North Dakota has ever encountered a challenging coworker, someone who's kind of gotten under your skin a little bit, grinded your gears a little bit. But early in my career, I can honestly say I let a lot of relationships sour because I constantly felt the need to defend myself, right? I constantly felt like the PE teacher was looked at as like a duck, duck, goose monitor and not much more than that. And I felt the need to constantly kind of fight and argue to prove my worth. I can't tell you how many times in those early years and a little bit in the middle years, maybe even as early as this year, I've been in the break room making copies, laminating, whatever I have to do. And someone will come up to me and go, "Oh, you have to do lesson plans too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's wild. Like I have a diploma and everything. It's crazy." But early in my career, again, those interactions would really bother me and made work kind of challenging to go into early on, until one day. Ironically, I was in the break room making my copies. I was making giant numbered cards. We were playing a very simple throw and catch game where if you throw it to your partner, they can catch it in one of 5 different levels. If you catch in level 1, you get 1 point. If you catch in level 5, you get 5 points, so on and so forth. So I was making my cards for that. And I overheard one of our classroom teachers talking to one of the science teachers about her struggling. She was having a really hard time with the layers of the atmosphere. The kids just weren't getting it. It was a 4th grade group. And she was going on and on about how it wasn't even the order the kids weren't getting. They couldn't even grasp the terminology. They couldn't even remember the actual vocab. And the light bulb in my brain blew up, which explains where most of my hair went. I thought, wait a second. I don't have to change my lesson plan at all. I don't have to change my game at all. I'm just going to change my cards from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, so on and so forth. And we're going to now, mind you, I should preface this by saying I was not doing this as some altruistic, I want to help everyone. I was doing it 100% out of spite. I was doing it just to prove that I could do my job and their job at the same time relatively easily. Now, I prided myself, and I still do, on punctuality. I wanted to make sure if class ended at 1:30, those kids were lined up, water had been drank and everything with like 15 seconds to go. So when the teacher comes, I can get those kids out the door on time every single time. This day, I did not do that. I let that game go and go and go and go. So when that teacher came to the door, I wanted her to hear a kid make a great catch and go, "Exosphere," and run back to their team and celebrate. And I wanted to wait to see her jaw drop. And sure enough, it did. And then we had a quick debrief about, why was it harder to catch in the thermosphere than it was the stratosphere, so on and so forth. And within an hour, sure enough, the science teacher came down the hall with tears in her eyes. And she's like, "These kids can't stop talking about the layers of the atmosphere. Thank you so much." And within a week, I was getting emails and texts. "Hey, we're talking about cardinal directions in social studies. Do you think maybe you can tie in north, south, east, and west?" Sure. I became the great collaborator all of a sudden in our building. And while it made me feel good inside, what it ultimately did was soften those relationships, right? I didn't feel the need to prove myself. I had people reaching out to me now. And I felt more comfortable saying, hey, we're doing this unit coming up. What are you working on in math? I'll figure out a way to tie it in and kind of just strengthen those bonds. The key I want to drive home with this, it didn't really take any extra work on my part. Whatever I was planning on doing, we were going to do anyway. I would just change a vocab word. Or instead of scoring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, we would count by twos, or in factors of 4, or even numbers only, and just figure out ways to make myself available and show my worth rather than trying to prove my worth. So just a little tip, little trick for dealing with those coworkers who might not see PE in the same light that folks do here. Now, another challenge that I'm positive is just unique to my situation in New York City are challenging students. I'm sure that none of those exist within the borders of the state of North Dakota. But one of my favorites was the big guy here, my main man, Owen. Owen was a tough nut to crack, man. Owen was, I met Owen my first year of teaching, same year as my girl Ziggy. And Owen was a big kid and an angry kid. Owen would show up to school late every single day, never absent, but always late, 20 minutes or so, with his jacket and his backpack kind of like draped, dangling behind him, this nasty, nasty snarl on his face. Owen had been held back a year already, so he was in 3rd grade for the second time. So he was much larger than most of the kids in his class, and he was just mean, man. He would come in and slam his backpack down. He would often like flop on the floor and like hide under his desk. If you tried to help him up, he would literally growl or bark at you. And just like it's not a pleasant dude to be around, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember about 3 weeks or so into the school year, my 3rd class of the day had just left, and I was cleaning up the equipment. Again, another rookie mistake. I had not learned yet that the kids should always clean up the equipment at the end of a lesson. I was still doing it, but I learned quickly. I was cleaning up my equipment, and the phone rang. And it was Miss Thompson. She was Owen's classroom teacher up on the 2nd floor. And she's like, Mr. Martinez, Owen is pushing and throwing furniture around the room. He's kind of creating an unsafe situation. Could you come up and maybe take him out for a walk real quick? One of the perks of being the only male teacher in your building, you often got called to deal with situations like this whenever they arose. So I went upstairs, I left my equipment on the floor. I grabbed Owen. He came down to the gym with me, did not say a word, just had his nasty snarl on his face. But he helped me clean up my cones and put things away. Didn't say a word. He cooled down eventually, went back upstairs, dropped him off. Next day, same thing happened, same time. 10:57, the kids walked out. 11 o'clock, my phone rang. Hey, Mr. Martinez, it's me again. Owen is opening and closing his umbrella and swinging it around the room and kind of creating an unsafe situation. Can you come pick him up and maybe take him for a walk a little bit? I said, sure thing. Left my equipment, went to go get my guy, brought him back downstairs. Again, did not say a word to me, just kind of walked a few laps around the gym, didn't want to talk about it, picked up a few pieces of equipment for me. Eventually he cooled down, we brought him back upstairs. So this went on for, I don't know, probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks, every single day, like clockwork. 10:57, the kids left. 11 o'clock, the phone rang. I went to go get Owen. So one day after school, I saw Miss Thompson, and I stopped and I said, what is going on with your boy? It's like, and she goes, listen, I don't know, but I absolutely, I dread that transition from math to ELA. I know that as soon as I start wiping that board, my man's going to freak out and have a meltdown. And I just got to make sure no one gets hurt when it happens. And again, for the second time, probably where the rest of my hair went, the light bulb went off again. And I said, wait a second. Every day at 10:57, you transition from math to ELA? And every single time, Owen picks that very same moment to have his meltdown? Huh. How is Owen in math? She said, he's fine. He's, grade level-ish. He does okay. I said, cool. How is he in ELA? She goes, he can barely read at a first grade level, let alone a third grade level. So you see, Owen was no dummy. Owen took 3 weeks of the school year to figure out his schedule and say, if I can get myself kicked out of this class at 11 o'clock, I don't have to read in front of my classmates. So he figured out all I have to do is pick the weapon of my choice, swing around my head a few times, and I get to leave for ELA. So I came up with an idea. I went to one of my good friends, a first grade teacher named Miss Finkel, and I asked her, I said, hey, can I bring Owen to your class for Mystery Reader tomorrow? Now, I can't share her response because this is a family-friendly show here, but suffice it to say, she was not thrilled with the idea. So I said, listen, I'll be there with him. If anything, if the whole plan goes sideways, I'll yank him out. But I think it might work. So finally she agreed. And the next day, my 10:57 class left. I did not wait for the phone to ring. I just sprinted up the stairs and got there before the meltdown started. And I jumped in the doorway and went, psst, hey, come here. And I caught him off guard. He was surprised to see me that early. So he looked at Miss Thompson, looked back at me. She said, be my guest. So he got up and he walked over pre-meltdown. And I said, listen, buddy, I need your help. I said, Miss Finkel needs me to be her mystery reader today, but she's got 2 reading groups and they're both reading different books. I can't read to both of them. Would you go and read this book to her small group while I read to the big group? And he looked at me and looked at the book and looked at it was a low level first grade book, and looked at me again and looked at the book and nodded his head. Phase 1 was off to a good start. So we walked down the hall, we go to Miss Finkel's class, and he walked over to his group. He sat down in his chair, sat up nice and tall. Again, first grade chairs are a little bit smaller. He had about 6 kids sitting on the carpet in front of him. And I still get chills thinking about it because he just started reading. And just like a classroom teacher where he would, he'd read the page, then turn and show the book, the pictures to the kids, then read the page and turn and show the book. And I was on the other side reading to the other kids, and I couldn't help but thinking that probably for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like an idiot reading in front of other people. Quite the opposite. He felt empowered. He felt in charge. He had tiny little people who were sitting in front of him looking up to him. And he was reading a book that he knew he could read. Now, there is no Disney movie. I'm not trying to paint an after-school special for you here and say that he became a model student after this. Far from it. But I will tell you what did happen. The 11 o'clock phone call stopped. We did this for probably about a week and a half or so. And then he got to earn it as a reward moving forward where, if he earned X amount of check marks, he can go back and do mystery reader again. The 11 o'clock phone call stopped. And probably more important than that was the perception of Owen in the building changed a little bit. Mind you, some teachers still weren't thrilled with him, but he wasn't Hurricane Owen anymore. He wasn't this bad kid with a bad attitude who, was too tough to deal with. He was embarrassed. He had a very, very clear problem, obviously didn't know how to solve it because he was 9, and figured out a way that worked for him, right? Throw a tantrum, get removed, my problem is solved. Which reminds me of this quote here and this beautiful picture that I love sharing, that if you change the way you look at things, those things you look at begin to change. And I think that's true for any, for the Owen in your life, in your school, for the coworker that doesn't quite understand what quality PE means or what that looks like, for the administrator maybe that doesn't understand what that looks like or means, for those programmatic changes that come up, when you have a great activity planned and then in the morning find out that picture day got moved to the gym and you get bumped somewhere else. When a global pandemic comes your way and you don't know if you're teaching from home or from your gym on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday for, 11 months or so. If you change the way that you look at that situation and look at maybe the opportunities that it provides instead of the things that it takes away, that situation starts to change for you. I can use the last 11 months as a great example. Truth be told, I have never felt I did a great job of teaching, of really driving home health-related and skill-related fitness components, especially in jobs where I saw kids twice a week for 30 minutes. It's like, I know I want them to move. Oh yeah, by the way, flexibility on the way out the door, and hope that those concepts stuck. This was an opportunity where You're in your living room, I'm in mine. Let's talk about cardiorespiratory endurance and really drive that concept home. Or you know what? I've always wanted to really dive into a nutrition unit, but never felt like I had the time to do pencil paper type stuff. I've had 11 months to do it now. We've gotten into some pretty good stuff, and talking about your favorite foods and your favorite snacks. Or maybe you've always wanted to do a yoga unit and didn't think kids would be into that because, they're in the gym, they want to run and shoot and catch and throw. Everyone can do that now in their living room. So changing the way that I perceived having to teach from home has made this, I don't want to say an enjoyable experience, but one that I certainly think benefits students and myself alike. So I encourage you, as these challenges come up, and believe me, they're going to come up early and often. As these new situations arise, try to spin the way that you look at it. Because again, the way you look at it will dictate the way you feel about it and the way it impacts you. I wish I could have shared this message with, again, those 10, 15, 20-year teachers that I've come across who have one eye on retirement and the other eye on the clock for 3:15 and are kind of mailing it in, day out, waiting for their job and their day to be over. I hope that this small mindset shift can hope to avoid that burnout for you as well. Because folks, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know this job is hard. It's not easy. And in recent times and recent events, it's even more difficult than ever before. But what I also know is that our kids need us more than ever before. And while it's not easy and at times it doesn't always feel fun, I can tell you, if you do it right, it's a hell of a ride and a hell of an adventure. I encourage you to make the most of your ride and your adventure. I thank you so much for letting me share a few words on my personal journey with you today. I hope you have a wonderful journey the rest of your day today. And again, it's going to be a wonderful day of teaching and learning. Have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your school year, a great career. I look forward to sharing with you in just a few moments at my session. Thanks for coming out today. Have a wonderful day, folks.
Awesome. I know they can hear me clapping. I'm sure they are too. I'm seeing all the emojis going up. Again, thank you, Mike, for sharing your time this morning and sharing your story. A lot of that hit home with me as an elementary PE teacher too. I'm thinking back at my first year of teaching and my first day and teaching kindergarten, and they come in and a lot of that all happened as well. I've got a whole bag full of stories that we'll have to share on a different time when we've got more time. But you really, I think, set the tone for at least for me and hopefully for everybody else for the rest of the day today in the sessions and the rest of the year as it goes on. And hopefully, speaking from your presentation, hopefully everybody can embrace the journey and enjoy the adventure, because that's certainly what it is some days in the biggest and best classrooms, right, that we have in the schools. And so thank you. Again, thank you to Mike Martinez for joining us today and speaking. You can always reach out to him on Twitter. And then you can see him on the Open Forum podcast with Mike and Mike. And just a little shameless plug on my end. If you watch Let's Talk Phys Ed, you can also see him as a guest on that show as well. So, and he will be presenting at 9:00 here in his first session. 5 minutes. We will start going with all the sessions. I'm excited. It's different, but it will be fun, hopefully, and we can get through this. And hopefully next year, even though I love seeing everybody here, hopefully we can see everybody all in one place and do that. So couple quick announcements. 9:00 sessions will begin all the way until 4. The last session will start at 3:00. And so make sure that you log on to those links that you've been provided with to see the presentations there. A couple announcements for credits. The registration for credits for the With Winning in Mind credit, that will be closing on the 22nd, which I should probably have looked at my dates, which is 2 days from now. That credit will close. And then for the conference related credit, that closes on the 25th. So if you're still interested in taking the conference for credit, make sure you get there and register. And as always, or as we mentioned yesterday, please remember that all of the sessions that are available today, if you're unable to see them at the specific time live, you can go back and watch them and still see all your favorite presenters. So again, thank you, Michael Martinez, for joining us today. Hopefully everybody has a great day and enjoys all of the sessions. Thank you, everybody.